Now, this alleged global terror threat that forced the closing of nearly 24 diplomatic posts also set off a flurry of drone strikes in Yemen. In nearly the last 2 weeks, several drone strikes have been carried out against targets in Yemen, reportedly killing suspected militants. In fact, there have been 3 such drone strikes in Yemen in just the past day. But as we're getting used to seeing in our drone war campaigns, exactly who's being killed on the ground is unclear. The Washington Post reported on Wednesday. Officials said Tuesday there is no indication that senior al-Qaeda operatives in Yemen have been killed in the drone strikes. It's too early to tell whether we've actually disrupted anything, a senior U.S. official said. The renewed drone bombing campaign in Yemen comes just as a new report from the Bureau of Investigative Journalism alleges that one of the most controversial tactics of the drone war, so-called double-tap strikes, is still in use by the CIA. Now, a double-tap strike refers to a series of drone strikes against one particular target, so that a second or third strike usually comes just as first responders and rescuers are responding to the first strike. UN investigators have referred to this tactic as a war crime. But the Bureau of Investigative Journalism says that 5 such double-tap drone strikes occurred in a single village in Pakistan in the middle of 2012. Now, I was joined earlier by investigative journalist Chris Woods, who has been involved in carrying out some of the leading investigations into CIA drone strikes in recent years and is currently writing a book on the U.S. covert drone war. I asked him, what's the usefulness in double-tap drone strikes, and is it just about terrorizing the enemy at this point?
I mean, I've been looking at these double-tap strikes for a couple of years now. They are definitely happening. I have no doubt about that at all. Working with the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, I carried out 2 major field investigations in Pakistan on this so far. Coming back absolutely clear, these double-tap strikes are happening. This deliberate targeting of rescuers on the scene of a previous strike. Why are they doing it? I think partly to ensure that the original intended targets are killed. And going back and making sure that anyone in addition who's drawn into that strike is killed. But I do think there is a significant element of terror here in these strikes. It causes a profound level of fear in these communities. And it's interesting to note that we first broke, the Bureau of Investigative Journalism first broke this story of the double-tap strikes in February 2012. Not a single US official has yet to deny that claim. The best we've had is the Deputy US Ambassador in Pakistan saying, we don't deliberately target civilians in these double-tap strikes. So no denial at all. I'm absolutely clear these double-tap strikes are taking place, and they were revived again last year.
There's been an increase in drone strikes in Yemen here in the last few days. Is this attributed to this kind of global terror threat that we've heard of? Is there something else behind them? What do you think?
I'm absolutely sure it's linked to the global terror threat, and it is worrying as well. The US has this rule book now, we're told, this stricter rule book which is supposed to limit civilian deaths in places like Pakistan and Yemen. But unfortunately, the moment this crisis came to light, that rule book appears to have been significantly thrown out of the window. The Washington Post has reported that many of these strikes that are taking place in Yemen right now are simply buying time for the US intelligence community while it finds out what's going on. And because the rule book has been thrown out, because they're taking less care over these strikes, there's a much greater risk of civilians being killed. And that's what we're seeing. CNN reporting this morning that 2 civilians were among those killed in the early hours of this morning in a strike in Yemen. So the strikes are reacting to this al-Qaeda terror threat. We're getting a big upswing in attacks, which in turn is generating more civilian deaths, and the risk of civilian deaths, which in turn risks more backlash, I think, in countries like Yemen.
Right, I remember it was just a few months ago that the president gave his national security speech, and he announced these new presidential guidelines that would govern future drone strikes. But as you said, it appears that those have been kind of thrown out the window here. Clearly, there's a lack of congressional oversight over what's going on in the drone warfare. That was revealed during Brennan's nomination to head the CIA. Do you think members of Congress are aware of double-tap drone strikes? And if not, how do you think they would react to that? And how could they not be aware of it if you're out here talking about it?
Yeah, there is no way that Congress is unaware of these double strikes. I just don't think they're interested in investigating them. And I think they may have spoken with CIA, and CIA has assured them that there's not a problem there. Oversight is a big problem in Washington right now. The Senate and House Intelligence Oversight Committees just aren't doing their job, in my opinion. For example, when Dianne Feinstein, the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, said during John Brennan's confirmation hearing as head of CIA that she'd done her utmost to find out that civilian casualties were in low numbers. Afterwards, I contacted every single organization that had carried out field work in Pakistan into civilian deaths. Whatever the outcome of those investigations, every one of them came back to me and confirmed they'd never been contacted by congressional oversight committees. There isn't any oversight outside the US intelligence community. It's a self-referential system at the moment. And I think when things go wrong, as they occasionally do, oversight has to mean stepping outside your comfort zone, asking some difficult questions, and asking what's really going on.
We're in the midst of the anniversary of dropping the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And at the time when we dropped those bombs, we were completely unaware of the long-term consequences of that sort of warfare. Here we are several years now into this drone warfare program. We have this issue of double-tap drone strikes. Do you think the administration is fully aware of the long-term consequences of carrying out this sort of global drone war all across, well, I said global, all across the globe?
I don't think any of us are aware of the consequences. We can look back on the invasion of Iraq by the US and UK 10 years ago, and some of the appalling consequences that were unleashed from that. The radicalization of many young Muslim men, terrorist attacks across Europe, and many attempted terrorist attacks on the United States, some of which succeeded as a direct consequence of that. One can look at the drone strikes and assume we might get similar patterns of behavior. There's mixed evidence on that at the moment. What's certainly clear is how unpopular these drone strikes are internationally, not just in the countries that are being bombed, but all across Europe. US drone strikes deeply unpopular among some of the United States' closest allies, causing deep discomfort. Right-wing, left-wing newspapers here in the UK, for example, there's no difference when it comes to covering the drone strikes. They are covered negatively. This is a problem for the United States that I think isn't just about the relationship with the Muslim world, it's about the relationship between the US and the international community.
Investigative journalist Chris Woods, thank you so much.
Thanks.